This is the Cap Stable Podcast, CSM 10 Candidate Interviews. If you'd like to help support shows and efforts like these, please consider donating to the Cap Stable Patreon. Link at capstable.net. Pilots, here are your candidates. Welcome to the Cap Stable Podcast. I am Lank Theris. With us tonight is Sugar Kyle. Thank you, Sugar, for joining us, and welcome to the welcome back to the show.
Well, thank you for having me again.
So we'll go straight at it. So, for those new to the CSM process, can you tell us a bit about yourself, who you are, and what is your background in the game?
Hi there, I'm Sugar Kyle. I am a 3-year player in EVE Online. I live in Lowsec, and I would classify as a pirate. I'm a member of Snuffbox, which is a Lowsec PvP, more pirate-based corp out of Caldari, Galante, faction warfare area up in Lone Track area. And so I do Lowsec. That's where I've lived my entire game life. I moved there about 2 months old, and I haven't left. I also run markets, build capital ships. I mostly do combat pilot stuff. I'm really big into exploration as one of my PvE activities when I have the time to do PvE type of stuff these days. And in general, I just really like playing the game, running around, and flying spaceships.
All right, so you are a current member of CSM 9. Why have you decided to run again?
Well, I've really enjoyed my time on CSM 9, but I have stuff to do. There's a lot of these projects are very large, and a year seems like a long time, but when you've gotten down into it and you have projects going and you kind of see the stuff as it's developing, it's like I have stuff to do. I'm actually not ready to be done yet. I mean, it's a lot of work, but we're finally moving forward into POS and alliances and corporations, and I mean, they're going to be doing the nullsec stuff. And we've gotten so much stuff done so far. You know, we've had the power projection nerf, and we've just done so many things, but we're not finished. And so I want to finish this up. I'm really, really excited about POS and the corporations and alliances. I'm really hopeful about PvE stuff. I've been doing a lot of work with PvE. And so I want to keep going. I don't want to just stop in the middle of everything and let all this work and momentum I built up drop.
So how has your platform evolved since last year?
Well, my platform is pretty much the same. I'm very low-sec focused. I'm market and industrial focused. You know, I love my new players. I want contracts and boosters and that stuff. But I've gotten a lot of stuff done. I've gotten a lot of attention paid to Lowsec, which was one of my big things. We were very ignored for the past time, so we've gotten attention. CCP has started to develop a better concept for Lowsec, so that's kind of great, but that's not enough. So now I want to move that in. I want to work in these PvE changes, and hopefully the PvE tools CCP is building will be finished so that we can revive PvE. And I just want to kind of take it all now that I see the bigger picture since I've been on the CSM and keep going with it, because I think we can build a really solid platform in Lowsec, and we can, you know, improve PvE for the rest of the game. We can do a lot of work with new players because I've seen a lot of what CCP is trying to do, and I'm really hopeful for that. But I just kind of want to keep going with where I am. So I'm still doing the exact same things. I think I've just progressed more.
So what do you think were your biggest personal accomplishments on CSM 9?
My biggest personal accomplishments that I can sit down and plant my flag and say 100% this was Sugar Kyle started and ended has been exploration changes. In Phoebe, we had a lot of exploration changes come in, just fixes to complexes. Exploration is opened up where sites are escalating that weren't escalating. They're escalating from high sec to low sec. They're just escalating more, where we had a 2% chance. That's improved. So it used to be you did 2,000 of them and maybe 2 would escalate. Now, you know, you do a dozen and you're probably going to get an escalation or 2. So a lot of exploration changes with fixing it, just fixing problems, fixing micro warp drive restrictions, and lots of cleanup in that aspect of the PvE system has been stuff that I've been pushing for since I started, and a lot of that's come into the game now. With a few hopeful little tweaks still coming, we're trying to kind of balance data sites, and we're looking to, hopefully I've been begging for like more faction drone modules and things like that, but I can really say I pushed these PvE changes. Even getting fleet warp to your escalation, which wasn't there before, should be there now, that kind of stuff. So that's kind of my 100% feather on the cap. I can put my name on that.
So we've asked you this question last year, and I want to ask you again, see because how it's adapted. But do you still consider your core constituent to be those low-sec players? Has it evolved? Has it changed?
I think it's actually evolved. Like, I do think it's low sec. I've developed better relationships. I mean, last year I lived in Molden Heath and I had my PvE Corp and I knew people. And as the campaign season went on, I met people and I came to them and I said, this is who I am. This is what I do. This is my background. This is what I want to do for you. I think that I've shown that. I've done that. I've given people that person I said I was. And people have trusted in me. They gave me that trust by voting for me. And I think I've repaid that. And I've develop relationships. People come to me and they're like, oh, sugar this or that, and I can bring these topics up or discuss it with them, bring their concerns forward. And then more people got to know me. And there are people who are in the industry and people in wormholes and people in high sec who like me. They like what I do or what I say. The fact that I believe that EVE is a much larger game than low sec. And a lot of them hang out with me. And so I've learned from them. They bring their various concerns to me. And I've learned more about the game because of that and trying to help people out. So it's not just low sec. It's whoever really wants to come and sit down with Sugar. I'm more than happy to talk with them, whether they voted for me or not.
So we're going to get a little bit into the harder questions now. So
I like the easy ones.
So what are your views on the so-called Apex Force issue? As this issue is also kind of mired with the way currently how SOV works, what are your views on how these ships need to be balanced in order to go hand in hand with any new gameplay style?
Well, when Apex Force, I'm going to say we're talking about our big ships. I don't know how these big ships are used when it comes to claiming SOV. I understand the basics. You have large battles with them, but I'm not out there. I've not done SOV work, and so I'm not going to make random guesses. In low sec, we have capitals. We have, capitals and supers. And now with them going through gates and with the power projection changes, we're seeing more capital use. We're seeing more supers on the field. We're seeing more Titan drive-bys. We now have doomsdays and low sec. And for me, it's a matter of making sure that we can kill these spaceships. They're here. They're out. People are using them more. It seems like they're using them more. And that's something that I've gone to CCP about. I want to know what this usage is in low sec. How much has it improved? Then we have to be able to kill what's being used. So we need to make sure that they're dying with some type of reasonable regularity. I mean, no one wants to lose their big toy, but if people can just take them out and never worry, we're still where we used to be. So that I need to make sure that they're dying. And then after that, it's what are people doing with them? My biggest concern, and it's one of the topics that I'm bringing to the Winter Summit in 2 weeks, is what are these ships becoming oppressive? Our meta has changed in low sec, and now we're seeing these much larger fleets. Groups like Snuffbox, my own corporation, has grown, and we've become an alliance, and we're much, much bigger. And that's cool, and I think low sec has the room for all size groups, but we need to make sure that because of the way that these ships are used and because of the way they're killed, that they're not becoming oppressive to smaller gangs and solo pilots and etc. So for me, it's very much a balancing issue. I simply want people to use their toys. I have a lot of veteran players who want to take their big toys out and they want to play with them. At the same time, though, we need to make sure that that gameplay does not stagnate the rest of the game. So I don't have a broad, this is how I want supers to be balanced. I more want people to use them productively, enjoy themselves, but still put themselves at risk and be able to be countered by smaller groups. So it's not just like, oh, we can't do anything. So there's a lot kind of going on there. And now that we're 2-3 months forward, I really want to see where we are statistically. And that's one of the nice things about being on the CSM, that I can sit down and say, where are we? How are we doing? And if these numbers are bad, we need to change it.
What are your views or opinions on the concept that's often bandied about occupancy-based SOV?
I think it will be interesting. I've sat down and I've listened to the SOV people. I've talked to the people in the CSM. I've talked to people who come to me who are renters or they live in SOV, but they're not kind of, I guess, the major players. I think living in space and having things to do is important. Otherwise, you have bored pilots. That exists in LoSec. I think that there needs to be things for people to do, that they need to be gainful so that it's worth their time and energy to do them, and that it gives them value. If people value their home, if their home provides for them, if their home is worth taking care of, if their home is something that they can be proud of, then I think you will see people happier and less bitter and less bored. Instead of just logging in because a ping went out on Jabber, you're going to log in because you're playing your game, you have your home, you're defending things, and then people being in space causes other people to be in space. And then you get battles and you get conflicts and you get all the little ins and outs of daily life in this game that are, for me, what's the fun part. I don't participate in very large battles, but my fun is in that daily back and forth. You know who your neighbors are and they're in space and you're in space and you guys roam and you intermix with each other. So I think there's a lot of value to that, much more value than we own a huge chunk of space and we kind of tend it, but we really don't care about it. We just kind of do it for ISK. I think care is important, but I love the game, so I think other people should love the game too.
So have you or any current members of CSM have any issues conforming to the NDA requirements put upon you by CCP?
I haven't. I'm pretty careful about it. I mean, the NDA it's kind of a big responsibility. If we violate it, they're going to tell us less. So what I personally do is I just ask. They've been pretty open with us about things. So it's pretty easy to say, can I say that? Can I discuss that? Can I put that in my blog post? Can I go and ask people questions about this? And they've been pretty good with that. They're like, yeah, I'll go and ask questions, find out about this, find out about that. We want to know more about these topics. So I haven't had a problem. Every now and then things slip. I know at least one other member had a public slip on his podcast, but it was with CCP and it wasn't while it was running live. So I don't think it's been a huge problem that I know of myself, but I know I'm super careful about it. So I always just ask permission.
But you've had the occasional slip up by another member of CSM.
I think so. I like I said, I know at least one. It's not something I've heard a lot of where people have been like, oh my goodness, everybody's violating NDA left, right, and center. And the one that I can point at is public and could have been covered up, but CCP agreed to let the information go. So it was that. But I don't have any detailed ones where everybody can't follow the NDA and life is terrible type thing.
All right. So in our research about how CSM9 currently operates, it's come to our notice that Cyan Kumitomo and yourself have pretty much taken the role of de facto leadership on the council. First, is this true, and how has this affected the working dynamic for the rest of CSM10? Oh, sorry, CSM9.
I wouldn't say that. I would never have sat down and said I've taken on a leadership role for CSM9, with all honesty. I'm the one who sat down at the beginning of the session and said, I don't think we should have officers. I don't think there's any reason for it. I firmly believe that every member is elected by the people that they elect because that is the person they want to represent them, and you shouldn't have a title that makes you better than someone else. I think some of us may be more outspoken than others. I was a blogger before I came to the CSM. I'm a blogger still, so I simply have more volume of information I share with the public, but I think that's also why people who elected me, or not all, but some people elected me because that was the habit that I had, and they knew they would probably get that type of communication. Cyan has written some articles for Matani.com, and he's a very forceful person. He and I have arguments for hours. It's fantastic. We can argue each other to a complete standstill and not agree on things, but I wouldn't say that we have a particular leadership role. I fully expect every member to represent and be accountable to the people that elected them and anyone who asks them a question, and that they're going to speak for themselves if they have something to say, but I'm not going to do something or not do something because of other members. I am accountable to the people who elected me, so I just kind of forge forward and do my own thing.
But with the average observer, if they were to look at the body with very little information, can you honestly say, hey, those two seem to get things done, or at least discuss, or they seem to generate a fair amount of work and volume in comparison to, say, a standard committee?
I would say we do, but I would also give credit to Corbex, Steve, Mike, and Xanders too. Those are the very public people on the CSM. Like Corbex and I do a lot of stuff together.
So,
go on. Sorry.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, like, Corbex and I do a lot of stuff together. Steve is incredibly active, and like I interact with him in some of the CSM9 and his little things, web projects, and etc. So I couldn't say that I feel I do like more than they do, because I know that they're super active in their communities and in areas where I don't have anything to say.
And glad you actually touched on those individuals, because question kind of rolls into this one. On the matter of working relationships within the current CSM, can you talk about which members are actively involved and cooperating and which members are not necessarily as much? And if so, how can this be remedied or rectified in some way?
So some members are definitely more active than others. I know that I interact with some people more on Skype or on the forums more than others. I'll say, like, I spend a lot of time with Corbex, Steve, Scion, Mike, Xander. He has his oil rig, so sometimes his connections in and out. Like, I don't see ProGod as often. I know Allie's been really busy. I don't really talk with like Core Blood a lot. I talk with Asay and Gorski. They're around all the time. I don't talk with Funky as much as I'd like to. But so some of them aren't as active as others when it comes to the type of activity I do. Is that what their voters, one of them? I don't know. I believe people vote for the people they vote for. Like if somebody's voted on for nullsec, or because frankly some people vote for people because they want their person on the CSM, if that's what their voters are happy with, then that's what their voters are happy with. For me, I don't worry about it. I just go and do my own thing. It's good when you have people to collaborate with because you don't know everything. But like I said, I spend most of my time with probably Corbex and Steve.
So this actually touches upon a question I actually had down in regards to there's two representatives of LowSec on CSM, DJ Funky Bacon you mentioned. Why the lack of communication? How has the overall group benefited or the game benefited if you haven't really communicated or interacted with the other LowSec candidate?
Well, I guess a lot of it's what they're around for and how often they're around. Funky represents his faction warfare people, and he brings up the various conflicts and stuff that's going on, which is good because he's inside of it and I'm not. But at the same time, I guess you kind of as synergize, as stupid of a word as that is, with some people more than you do with others, and you just kind of like fall into each other's projects. Corbex and I, who I'd never met Corbex before we started the CSM, and it didn't occur to me that I would work really well with him, work really well together. And we kind of have very similar project ideas and project focuses, so we wind up feeding off of each other. He comes to my various talks, and I go to his talks, and it's just one of those things where we developed a relationship without realizing it. So is it I couldn't, I guess it's stuttery, but you don't know who you're going to work with and how well you're going to work with them or their time, their habits. Like I'm kind of obsessed with this. So I'm on all the time. I have my phone. So I'm at work writing really bad messages and typos in Skype all the time. And some people just don't have the free time that I do to put into the CSM, which is, I guess, unfortunate because there's a lot of time. This thing eats up a lot of time.
So this year, CCP released the now much talked about This Is Eve video, and it rolls into this question: is that last year you ran on the new player retention, and how have you helped CCP to improve this new player retention? As in, we do remember the talk at FanFest last year where they talked about the rather dismal new player retention. How has this changed, or how is it being addressed?
Well, I think CCP turned around and they reached out to the players a bit more when it came to their new player retention, which isn't something they had done as much. The ties between CCP and the player base and CCP kind of promoting like a particular organization, I think they've been leery about that in the past. But with the This Is Eve stuff, they seem to embrace that a lot more. They very openly went to the players and said, who can we send new players to? What corporations can we do? What resources can we get for them? A lot of people just dove in. I did. We got access to Rookie Chat and we helped in Rookie Chat, writing documents. I've spent a lot of time just sending people to other people. So I've met people in faction warfare, and those faction warfare groups, certain of them will take brand new players. So when I'm in rookie chat and I talk to somebody and they're like, oh, tell me about faction warfare, I'll pull them aside, I'll talk to them. And if they're interested in it, I can send them to a faction warfare group, or I can send them to Eve Uni, or I can send them to Brave Newbies. So more so than ever, CCP actually went to the players. They made a big new player guide with videos, links to wikis, and actual player resources instead of trying to duplicate those. And I think that made a big difference this time. I don't know what the retention rates yet are from the This Is Eve thing, and that's on my list of things to get statistics about. I'd like to see, are we keeping these people? It feels like we are, but that's because I'm really hopeful, and so I want to know. I don't know if we've kept them, but I'm really, really hoping to find out that we've been keeping these new players from that came in over the last couple months.
Okay. We are aware that CCP in the past has turned towards focus groups in order to look into how certain game mechanic changes may affect the larger game. Due to the complexity of the upcoming SOV changes, is CCP planning on or already doing this? And is the current CSM aware of these focus groups, or are you involved?
Okay. Focus groups such as player focus groups that CCP is using to touch on about SOV?
Yes.
Okay. I don't know what focus groups they've done. I know that they had an internal group from several different teams that kind of were getting together to do the SOV stuff. I know we have offered them to get together focus groups. The nullsec people put together huge documentations. We have a shared CSM9 Google Drive that we kind of dump information into. And I know there was a ton of documentation and nullsec stuff gotten by the nullsec people. And they've dumped it in, and I read it, and I kind of learned about SOV more, seeing like their issues and the things that they wanted and they presented. We had the SOV stuff at the summit, but we don't know where they're going yet with the SOV thing. We've been told that we're going to get a presentation at the Winter Summit, and that's kind of supposed to be, I guess, the kickoff, where they have some solid plans. So I don't have any better details. I would love to have details. It's kind of worrisome, frankly. We really, really, really would like to know what's going on, but we're not going to find out until the summit, and hopefully it's something good, because if it's not, well, it's going to suck.
So do you feel kind of like a little bit left out of the loop yet, or you think that CCP is still kind of working on it?
I think we should have been included more than we have been so far, and where they are with the SOV stuff. I know it's been asked by those who are actively into it. At the same time, for me, because the actual SOV mechanics are not something that I'm comfortable sitting down and saying this is how SOV should be run. For me, it's been more along the lines of where are we going with corporations and POS, and that's where I've been putting my energy into. Is Corbex and I have been doing POS information collection, because structures are going to matter. So Corbex and I have done a structure POS soundboard. We did one a couple weeks ago, and we're going to try to squeeze another one in before the summit. And it's kind of all tying into the bigger picture of how is SOV going to use these things, while we make sure that how everyone else uses structures isn't forgotten for how SOV is going to use structures. So I've kind of been putting my energy towards what I do have that familiarity and understanding with.
So if I'm able to interpret it right, so POS changes are coming along side by side with SOV changes then?
Yes, and so is Corps and Alliances. They all have to be done together. Like POS is also kind of covering structures. So POS structure stuff can't be done on its own, because Corps and Alliance roles are too interlinked with it. And SOV can't be changed without POS and Corporates and Alliances, because they're all tied into it as well. So it's like three really huge things moving on at the same pace, because they have to work on them all at the same time.
In your opinion, how difficult will it be to implement such complex changes in an already complex game, and particularly with sovereignty? And how do you think it'll affect not only the players that you've decided to represent, but the entirety of the game? Who do you predict are going to be the winners, and who are unfortunately going to be the losers in all this?
So it's a huge task. So I think the size of the change, the industry changes, are going to be a good look at how big of a change it's going to be. CCP took a mechanic and pretty much chopped it out, and they inserted a new mechanic. So they're completely rebuilding this stuff from the ground up. The good news is that means we get to dream as big and as expansive and as flexible as we want. which is really on the side of things like POS and Corps. It's really, really exciting. So when people are thinking about these things, we're coming to them and having soundboards and we're asking for feedback, I tell people, don't worry about how it currently is. Tell me how you want it to be, because we're looking at the future, not the past. When it comes to winners and losers and things like SOV, it's going to be the same story it's been for years. Whoever is organized is going to be like the winners. However, the goal, I believe, is that there should be greater flexibility for smaller groups. It shouldn't just be because we're big and we have 10,000 people, we own everything. How they're going to do that, I don't know. The numbers always win at a certain level. But I think making it not so desirable or needful maybe to have those numbers will be a good thing. For me, 100 people is an enormously, ridiculously large fleet. So I still struggle to understand what it must be like to have 10,000 people in like your alliance and you all working together. That's just an enormous amount of people to me. So go on.
It's all yours.
Oh, no, just so this idea of smaller groups is one that everybody wants. And that's where the ideas that came from the summit minutes over, not occupancy SOV, but the more granular no SOV, where you could like take a system where you could still establish something and attack. That's kind of where that came from. How do you get smaller groups to interact with larger groups and be able to harass and heckle them, but you still give larger groups a reason to stay in their space and a reason to actually put the time and effort into owning space. So it's a really, really complex problem where there seem to be many possibilities, and I think we're going to wind up trying some stuff, and some stuff's not going to work out when it actually gets in the field. But CCP says that they're willing to reiterate, which is something that a lot of people worry about because in the past they haven't. But if they are willing to reiterate and willing to not hold too tightly on the mechanics, hopefully we'll be able to have a flexing time and find something that actually seems to work. That's my personal hopes.
Now, I'm glad you touched upon the role of organization. In the most organized group will probably end up most likely to be the winner, because as you all know, luck favors the prepared. What would you like CCP to adopt as organizational tools for corporations and alliances? And by adopting those tools, can you somehow help them mitigate or help negate some of the the advantages that actively being involved in the metagame brings to the larger group?
Okay. Yes. So we have been discussing just granularity for the buzzword for it. But my idea is that things should not be so hard to manage that you have to have an experienced IT person in your group to build you tools to run the very basics of your corporation. That it should not happen that way. That information, if it's that essential to run your organization, the game should present for you already. And a great example of this was things like the ticks on your tower. If towers retain an hour-long tick, should it present itself somehow? Instead of it being something where it's obscure voodoo magic that you have to figure out when your tower ticks. What reason do we have for that? What reason do we have that we can't figure these things out in game? The game needs to give us more actual information, because we have the API, we have Crest, and Crest is a beautiful and wonderful and flexible thing, and I've learned more about it, even though it's definitely not something I understand in the big picture. I couldn't pick up Crest and use it, and that shouldn't have to happen. CCP put voice in the game, and while people may or may not like it, it gave groups the ability to have voice comms with each other. It's not perfect, but it's there. They need to put tools in that give people the ability to do the basic things that they need to do in this game to manage a group of people. Because if you want us to have 10,000 people, we need some basics to manage them. Reasonable roles, ways to put people into groups, ways to access and break down these groups that make sense and are usable and not obscure under the 5th level of the 7th right-click menu, so that we can be successful. So they need to give it to us. They need to build it in this time instead of just going, you can have a group and you can all be together and have a shared chat channel and that's it, because that's what happened this time. So they need to really put that time and energy into building all of that so that people don't have to have IT professionals to run a very basic corporation.
So, and I've asked you this question last year, so I'll ask you again.
Okay.
Who is the one candidate who would you like to see elected along with you on CSM 10?
I actually need Corbex. I need Corbex to get elected again. Like I said, he's kind of like my other half at this point. So I definitely need him to be elected so that I can continue to be productive with Corbex.
What do you believe is the biggest challenge facing CSM 10?
The biggest challenge facing CSM10 really is nullsec, because unlike corps and alliances and structures, nullsec is a very fluid concept, with especially whether we're going to do occupancy solve, whether we're going to do some hybrid of no solve, what have you. The challenge is going to be all that information, that feedback, and hopefully at the end of that year, spitting out something that's going to be good and healthy. Because right now, we're worried about the health of a program like that. And it's not going to be something that's a forever thing. It's going to have to change in the future. The players change, the game changes, SOV has to change. But we just need something that's healthy and that's interesting and that revives some of those areas. And I just think SOV's a very, very large challenge, and that's what we're looking at.
So, the wrap up, is there anything else you'd like to go ahead and talk about or discuss or bring up before we end this wonderful interview?
Well, for me, when it comes to people and their voting for CSM10 and et cetera, I say spend some time, look at candidates, find people who you're comfortable talking to, or who are going to, or if you're not comfortable talking to them or you don't want to talk to them, pick people who are going to represent what you want or think, or you feel that they're going to follow that path in the game. I think that kind of thing is very important. Just being on the CSM this year, I've really seen how CCP does listen to the CSM. They don't always listen to us. They don't always give us the feedback we'd like them to when it comes to changes players don't like, but we still give it. And you just need to make sure that whoever you vote for, it has a voice, or will pick up a voice that can speak for you. I think that's a very, very important thing.
All right. Thank you very much, Sugar, for coming on the show, and very good luck on your campaign.
Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.
Our pleasure. And thanks to all our listeners listening in. Stay tuned. You will be listening to more interviews for CSM10 coming up soon.